With all of that said, I haven't yet really talked about mouth versus nasal breathing. And it really can be a fairly short discussion because what abundant data now show and has been beautifully described in the book called Jaws, A Hidden Epidemic. This is a book that was written by Paul Ehrlich and Sandra Kahn, my colleagues at Stanford School of Medicine. It has an introduction and a foreword from Jared Diamond and from the great Robert Sapolsky, so some real heavy hitters on this book. What that book really describes is that whenever possible, meaning unless you're speaking or eating or you're exercising or other activities require some change in your pattern of breathing, we should really all be striving to breathe through our nose, not through our mouth. And that relates to the increased resistance to breathing through the nose we talked about earlier. Again, I'll say it a third time, that increased resistance through the nose allows you to inflate your lungs more, not less. The other thing that breathing through your nose allows you to do is it both warms and moisturizes the air that you bring into your lungs, which is more favorable for lung health than breathing through the mouth. Hard breathing through the mouth or simply mouth breathing at all is actually quite damaging, or can be, I should say, quite damaging to some of the respiratory functions of your lungs. That, of course, does not mean that you shouldn't breathe hard through your mouth when you're running or sprinting or exercising hard, but you don't want mouth breathing to be the chronic default pattern that you follow. Nasal breathing is the best pattern of breathing to follow as a default state. Another aspect of nasal breathing that's really beneficial is that the gas, nitric oxide, is actually created in the nasal passages. It's a gas that can cause relaxation of the smooth muscles that relate to the vasculature, not just of your nose, but of your brain and for all the tissues of your body. This is why nasal breathing and not mouth breathing is great for when you want to relieve congestion. So a lot of these things seem counterintuitive, right? Your nose is stuffed, so that mainly makes people breathe through their mouth, but it turns out that breathing through your nose will allow some dilation of the vasculature, more blood flow, dilation of the nasal passages, and delivery of nitric oxide to all the tissues of your body. And that dilation of the small capillaries that innervate essentially every organ of your body allow the delivery of more nutrients and the removal of carbon dioxide and other waste products from those tissues more readily than if you're not getting enough, nitric oxide into your system. Okay, so a lot of reasons to be a nasal breather. If you want to check out that book, Jaws, Hidden Epidemic, it's a terrific read, and it also shows some absolutely striking pictures, twin studies and so forth, and some before and afters of people and the aesthetic changes that they experienced when they shifted from being a mouth breather to a nose breather. These are striking examples that have been observed over and over again. When people mouth breathe, there's an elongation of the jaw, droopiness of the eyelids, and the entire jaw structure really changes in ways that are not aesthetically favorable. Fortunately, when people switch to becoming nasal breathers, and of course that takes some encouragement either by mouth taping or doing their cardiovascular exercise with mouth closed, or by doing the sorts of exercises that we talked about earlier, when they switch to becoming nasal breathers by default, the aesthetic changes that occur are very dramatic and very favorable, including sort of elevation of the eyebrows, not in an artificial sense or in a kind of outrageous way, but elevation of the cheekbones, sharpening of the jaw, and most notably improvements of the teeth and the entire jaw structure. In fact, one simple test of whether or not you can be an efficient nasal breather and whether or not you've been nasal breathing efficiently or most of the time in the past, or whether or not you've been relying more on mouth breathing, that was described in the book Jaws, is you should be able to close your mouth and breathe only through your nose. Again, this is at rest, not during exercise necessarily, though you might do it during exercise. But close your mouth, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and it should fit behind your teeth. And you should be able to nose breathe in that position. Now, many people won't be able to do that, but fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, if you nasal breathe, that is, you deliberately nasal breathe when at rest for some period of time, you will experience an increased ability to nasal breathe, and you should also experience some addition of space within the palate of your mouth to allow your tongue to sit more completely on the roof of your mouth. This is especially true for children that perform this technique. Again, I refer you to the book Jaws, A Hidden Epidemic. It's an absolutely spectacular book. You can also just look online before and after Jaws, Hidden Epidemic, and look at some of the changes in facial structure that occur when people move from mouth to nasal breathing, and it's really quite striking.